I get the camera situated there, and hello, BookTube. This is another reading from Abraham Lincoln in History, The Border States by John G. Nicolay and John Hay, private secretaries to the President. This one's on rebellious Maryland. I've read part of that earlier. Let me clear my throat. Sorry about that. Um, Let me see. Where can I start? Okay. Mr. Johnson thanking the president for his frankness, endorsing all his policy, and the word said he, all that you know suggest would be my purpose for our trust with your high office. He also promised the president note should be held perfectly confidential, but it appears that Mr. Johnson chose his confidants with poor judgment, for within 4 days his substance was written from Washington, directed to Jefferson Davis. So we go down here, then this is Samuel Chase, who is Secretary Treasurer. Took the frame of mind and wrote the president a curt little note, a querulous complaint, immediately prophetic of his future feelings towards and relations to Mr. Lincoln. Let me beg you to remember, excuse me, let me beg you to remember that the disunionists have anticipated us in everything, and that as yet we have accomplished nothing but the destruction of our own property. Let me beg you to remember also that it has been a darling object with the disunionists to secure the passage of the secession ordinance by Maryland. The passage of that ordinance would be a signal of the entry of disunion forces into Maryland. It will give a color of law and regularity to rebellion, and thereby triple strength. The Common House in Baltimore we seize, and Fort McHenry attacked, perhaps taken. What next? Do not, I pray you, let this new session of true reason be inaugurated in the presence of American troops. Save us from this new humiliation. The words of the brave old commanding general will do the work of prevention. You alone can give the word. The bad taste and injustice of such language consisted in his assumption that the president was somehow culpable of what had already occurred, whereas Mr. Chase had in the beginning had been more conciliatory towards the rebels than had Mr. Lincoln. Mr. Lincoln treated public clamor and fretfulness of cabinet ministers with the same quiet toleration. Again, as before and as ever after, he listened attentively to such advice as his cabinet had to give, but reserved the decision to himself. He looked over the Attorney General's legal notes, weighed the points of political expediency, canvassed carefully the probabilities of military advantage, and embodied his final directions in the letter to General Scott. My dear sir, the Maryland legislature assembles tomorrow at Annapolis. Not improbably will take action to arm the people of that state against the United States. The question has been submitted to and considered by me whether it would not be justifiable upon the ground of necessary defense for you as Commander-in-Chief of the United States Army to arrest or disperse the members of that body. I think it would not be justifiable nor efficient for the desired object. First, they have a clearly legal right to assemble, and we cannot know in advance that their action will not be lawful and peaceful. And if we wait until they shall have acted, their arrest or dispersion will not lessen the effect of their action. Second, we cannot permanently prevent their action. If we arrest them, we cannot long hold them as prisoners, and when liberated, they will immediately reassemble and take their action. And precisely for shame, if we simply disperse them, they are immediately reassembled in some other place. I therefore conclude that it is only left to the Commander General to watch and await their action, which shall be to arm their people against the United States. He is to adopt the most prompt and efficient means to counteract, even if necessary, to the bombardment of their cities, and in extremis necessary, suspense of the writ of habeas corpus. Thus directed, General Scott wrote to General Butler on the following day. In the absence of the undersigned, the foregoing instructions are turned over to Brigadier General B.F. Butler of Massachusetts Volunteers, other officers commanding at Annapolis, who will carry them out in the right spirit, that is, with moderation and firmness. In the case of arrested individuals notorious for their hostility to the United States, the prisoners will be safely kept and duly cared for, but not, not surrendered except for the order of the commander aforesaid. Measures are taken to concentrate sufficient troops at Harrisburg and at Philadelphia to approach Baltimore in force from those quarters and permanently to occupy the city, to give the military ample authority for every contingency. The President issued the following additional order to General Scott. You are to engage in suppression and insurrection against the laws of the United States. If at any point or on or in the vicinity of any military line which is now or which shall be used between the city of Philadelphia and the city of Washington, you will find resistance which renders it necessary to suspend the writ of habeas corpus for the public safety. You personally or thorough the officer in command at the point of which a resistance occurs are authorized to suspend their writ. Having run its course about a week or 10 days, the secession frenzy of Baltimore rapidly subsided. The railroad managers of that city once more attended the services of the War Department, but Secretary Cameron, instead of giving them immediate courage, ordered that the Annapolis route be opened for public travel and traffic. Their isolation, first created by bridge burning, was thus continued and soon began to tell necessary upon their business interests as well upon the general industries and comfort of that city. On the 4th of May, General Butler, under Scott's orders, moved forward, took post with 2 regiments at the Relay House, 8 miles from Baltimore, where he could control the westward trains and cut off communication with Harper's Ferry. The significance of all these circumstances did not escape the popular observation instinct. The Union newspapers took courage and once more printed bold leaders. The city government dismissed the rebel militia and permitted bridge and telegraphs to be repaired. Governor Hicks issued a proclamation for the election of members of Congress to attend this coming special session on the 4th of July. Let me read on, find some other place to read down. The Chief Justice immediately ordered an attachment issued against General Cadwalader for contempt, upon which the marshal may return that he was unable to serve it, being denied entrance to Fort McHenry. Therefore, the Chief Justice admitted the existence of pure military force, but declared that the President, on the Constitution of the United States, cannot suspend the privilege of writ of habeas corpus, nor authorize a military officer to do it, and that Merriman ought therefore to be immediately discharged, and went on to say that he should cause his opinion when filed, and all the proceedings to be laid before the President, in order that he might perform his constitutional duty and enforce the laws by securing obedience to the process of the United States. The To the general purport, the Chief Justice filed his written opinion on the 1st of June, caused a copy to be transmitted to the President. Go ahead and get a drink here. Excuse me. Of that opinion, it will not be irrelevant to quote the criticism of one of the profoundest and most impartial jurists of that day. Chief Justice Taney's opinion in Merriman's case is not an authority. This is, of course, not said in the judicial sense, but it is not even an argument in the full sense. He does not argue the question from the language of the clause, nor from the history of the clause, nor from the principles of the Constitution, except by elaborate depreciation of the President's office to the extent of making him, as Commander-in-Chief of the Army, call from these states into the service of the United States, no more than assistant in the Marshal's prose, the deepest plunge of judicial rhetoric. The opinion, moreover, had a tone, not to say a ring, of dissatisfaction to the President and to the northern and western side of his house, which is not comfortable to suppose in the person who fills the central seat of impersonal justice. To this estimate of the spirit of the Chief Justice Taney's view, we may properly, by way of anticipation, here add President Lincoln's own official answer to the substance. Original draft of the message, Lincoln's autographed manuscript, defies the executive authority with that force of statement and strength of phraseology which he so consummates a master. Soon after the first call of militia, I felt it my duty to authorize the commanding general, in proper cases, according to his discretion, to suspend the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus, or in other words, to arrest and detain without resort to ordinary process and forms of law such individuals as he might deem dangerous to the public safety. And my verbal requests, as well as by the general's own inclination, this authority has been exercised, but very sparingly. Nevertheless, the legality and propriety of what has been done under it are questioned, and I have been reminded from a high quarter that one who has sworn to take care that the laws be faithfully executed should not himself be one to violate them. Of course, I give some consideration to the question of power and propriety, but before I acted in this manner, the whole of the laws which I have sworn to take care of to be faithfully executed would be resisted, and failing to be executed in nearly 1/3 of the states, must I have allowed them to finally fail of execution, even had been perfectly clear that by the use of the means necessary to the execution of some single law made in extreme tenderness of the citizen's liberty, that practically relieves more the guilty than the innocent, should to a very extent be violated. To state the question more directly, are all the laws but one to go unexecuted, and the government itself go to pieces, lest that one be violated? Even in such a case, I should consider my official oath broken. If I should allow the government to be overthrown, when I might think disregarding of the single law would tend to preserve it. But in this case, I was not, in my own judgment, driven to this ground. My opinion, I violated no law. The provision of the Constitution that the provision of the Constitution, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless, when in the case of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it, is equivalent to a provision, is a provision, that such privilege may be suspended when in case of rebellion or invasion, the public safety does not require it. I decided that we have a case in rebellion and that the public safety does require the qualified suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus, which I've been authorized to be made. Nor is it insisted that Congress and not the executive vested with this power, but the Constitution itself is silent as to which or who is to exercise the power, and as the provision plainly was made for dangerous emergency, I cannot bring myself to believe that the framers of that instrument intended that in every case the danger should run its course until Congress could be called together, the very assembly of which might be prevented, as was intended in the case of the rebellion. The alterations and corrections of this first draft are more in personal form are finally sent to Congress and officially printed. The second and corrected form better benefits the measures solemnity of a state paper, but in language quoted above, we see brought in direct contact the living workings of Lincoln's mind. In this light, the autograph originally possesses a peculiar biographical interest and value. So next time on the border states, I'll go with Missouri is next. And so thank you for watching and have a good day.